All right. Oh, we're streaming. So the moderators for this session are Christoph Rainer Steinwand. So let me just remind everyone the ICR Code of Conduct. If you haven't read it, have a look at it. It's online. One of the most important points, please make sure that you're actually logged in Zoom and you have your actual professional name displayed here. And we can start the session. Sorry for the delay.
Right, so welcome everybody to the last technical session of PKC 2020. The first talk of this session is Improved Classical Cryptanalysis of Psych in Practice by Craig Costello, Patrick Longa, Michael Nerick, Joost Brenne, Fernando Virdia, and Joost is giving the talk.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Christoph. You can hear me, yes?
Yeah, don't forget to share your screen again.
Oh, didn't I thought I was already doing that. Thanks for reminding me, because that would have been awkward. Can you?
Yeah, perfect.
Can you see it? Okay, good. Okay, so the topic of this talk, as the title suggests, is cryptanalysis on psych. So psych is a round 2 candidate to the NIST standardization process. And so currently best known attacks are generic attacks. So they're attacks on claw finding problems or meet in the middle problems. And so recent sort of works on that were in the classical case by Adji et al. And in the quantum case by Jacques, Skank, and Schottenloher. And so what we do in our work is really take a practical look at things, so actually implement things and see what kind of challenges we run into. And of course, only in the classical case we do so because it's a bit more difficult in the quantum case. And we really specialize to the case of psych as opposed to a more sort of generic SIDH problem. So we really look at the choices that psych makes in their proposal, in their submission. Okay, and so what is SIDH again? So I'm going to really briefly summarize it here as a sort of a graph-based approach where we have nodes, which are isomorphs and classes of supersingular curves, and we have edges, which are going to be isogenies between these things. And so it's sort of an SIDH operation is start at some selected node, so here the blue one, and take some random walk in this graph. Here just a green walk ending up at some green node, which would be your public key. So if you want to attack this, you can do it in sort of a naive way, in a brute force way, by just sort of checking all possible public keys, and you end up with something that's has complexity linear in the number of public keys. And so you can, so one thing we can already observe here in the sort of the psych submission is that they make a certain choice on where to start your walk. And this is not sort of a generic choice or a random choice. Turns out it's a curve with very specific properties. So this is just the round 1 choice where the first step actually doesn't have as many outgoing isogenies to different curves as you would expect. And so what turns out is that this first step is basically void, which reduces the number of possible public keys and therefore reduces the complexity of the attack. Okay, and so you can be smarter about these attacks. So instead of just brute forcing it, you can start a walk both from the public parameter as well as the public key. You can do some sort of meet in the middle approach, trying to look for this one node in the graph that connects these two claws, so to speak. And the psych parameters really guarantee that there's a unique such node that connects these two claws. And now if you assume to have a memory of size W, you can improve the runtime of your cryptanalysis also by a factor W. And so here you want W to be as large as possible so that your time reduces as much as possible. But sort of for practical settings, your memory cannot get too large because it becomes hard. And at some point, such memories are just not feasible anymore. So there's an alternative approach, which is the Van Orshot-Wiener algorithm, which is similar but works better for small memories, where small here means memory size smaller than the square root of the number of public keys that are available. So still quite large, actually. And so I'm not going to go into details on how that works. It's sort of very similar to the polar row, and it has this following complexity. And so we can make a couple of extra remarks about the choices that psych makes So again, this starting curve not only has this cycle behavior, it's also a so-called subfield curve, which means it's defined over FP. And that also implies that it has a Frobenius endomorphism. And that sort of enforces some structure on the graph. Basically, it's very similar to the negation map for polar row for ECDLP attacks. So basically, you get conjugacy classes in this graph of size 2, which halves the number of nodes that you can, well, you can still end up on as many nodes, but you can identify them in pairs of 2 so that the number sort of halves. Okay, and finally, Psych makes some choices on arithmetic. So they use Montgomery curves and on isogenies between Montgomery curves, and that for one of the last step that you take, you sort of leak the kernel of the dual. It's always going to have x coordinate 1, and so that also gives away part of your walk, which again improves the cryptanalysis. So basically, we get a couple of small improvements because of the choices in Psych parameters. But of course, this is not major enough to break the scheme whatsoever. Okay, and so we implemented all of this. Our software is available in this GitHub repository. There's sort of 2 versions, one C library. So this implements the VOW algorithm, building on the Psych submission to guarantee that we have the fastest arithmetic available. And there's also a C++ library, which is more of a plug-and-play solution. So the intent is that you can plug in any sort of function that you want to find a collision or that you want to find a golden collision on, and sort of anything beyond your function is already implemented in a sort of a Norshot-Wiener library, so it should simplify. You won't have to redo a lot of the work. Okay, and so finally, we make some comments about actually scaling this. It's not trivial to go from a single machine to multiple machines, or even from a single core to multiple cores, and how to deal with increasing sizes of memory. So there are a bunch of practical choices we make and things we investigate. And for that, I'll just refer to the paper. So thanks. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Joost. Is there any question for Joost? Okay, I have a question. So Psych chooses this special parameter, this special curve to start with. I guess for efficiency reason, but you show that this also affects a little bit security. So I mean, you know a lot about efficiency of Psych as well. So do you think it's still the best choice, efficiency versus security?
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, here the security argument is really minor. So this choice that we make here is, yeah, so it is also a round 1 choice. So in round 2, so maybe I can quickly show it. So here, there's 2 things at play here. One, there's this cycle, and this sort of in the bottom here, you see the cycle in the blue thing, but there are also these 2 isogenies that go to the same node. And so what Psych round 2 does, as opposed to Psych round 1, it moves this curve 1 to the right, which means you don't have the cycle behavior anymore, and you can ensure that you always walk outwards, sort of. So you get rid of that problem, but it is still a subfield curve. So you still have the issue with Frobenius. But yeah, I mean, I would say because of these cryptanalytic results, it's not good enough reason to switch. I mean, it's 1 bit basically. And yeah, that's so minor that.
So to make it more precise in terms of efficiency, how much would you lose if you chose a random curve there?
Oh yeah, I don't know by heart, but I think at this point, the way we set up the Psych parameters, it's not an extremely significant. I think what you can use if you're a subfield curve, you can speed up the initial. So you first do a point multiplication with a 3-point ladder, and then you start your isogeny computations. Is this 3-point ladder that you can speed up if you can use the fact that you have some points which are in the subfield. But yeah, the dominating cost is still the isogeny computation. So yeah, you can gain something, but it's not extremely significant either, I would say. So
okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have one raised hand by Taco Boris Fuazza. I'll unmute you, so maybe you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you for the talk. I would like to know, why does the method that you use to determine the last isogeny, you can't apply it to recover more isogenies or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a bit of a that's a subtle question. Yeah, I mean, basically it has a little bit to do with, so if you compute an isogeny, basically what happens is that you compute from a curve to a curve. That's the way psych does it. You start on a curve and you end on a predefined curve. But actually, these nodes are not just curves, they are isomorphism classes of curves. So there could be different curves that you could have potentially ended up on. But because the psych protocol publishes exactly which curve they ended up on, you leak a little bit of information of, yeah, you leak more information than just publishing the isomorphism class. And sort of this is what leads to this, this dual isogeny. And once you compute one dual isogeny, you kind of lose that information. So you compute the dual isogeny, that again, that lands you on a node, but you only know the node, so you only know the isomorphism class. You don't know exactly which curve, yeah, the secret key computation landed on. So you can't really do it again, in a sense, if that makes sense. But it's a good question. It's a bit of a subtle issue. Yeah.
Thank you.
So then I would say, as we are a bit running late anyway, we just say thank you very much to Joost for the talk. And we would move on then to the second talk by Aurore Gievik. If you could then share your screen. So this will be a presentation on a short list of pairing-friendly curves resistant to specialty NFS at the 128-bit security level. Perfect, we can see the slide. Aurore, the stage is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. So this work is on the security of bilinear pairings for cryptography. So as a short in short, a pairing is a bilinear map from two groups T1 and G2 that are actually elliptic curves into a third group, a target group GT. It's bilinear on the left and on the right, and we want to be able to compute it efficiently. And in practice, it is used to design protocols because we can swap the scalar products. So pairing of A and B, so we can swap here to make it a pairing of B and A, and we can multiply in the exponent these scalars. And so in practice, the two first groups are elliptic curves, and target group is a finite field, and we want to choose the curves so that the pairing is secure, efficient, and compact in the sense that the finite field is not too large. And we want efficient arithmetic on the curve in the finite field. So which are the best options? And the problem is that recently there were improvements in the number field sieve for such finite field FPN. So it started, we can say it started in 2013. And the very important improvement was with Kim and Barbulescu work in 2016 with the extended tower number field sieve. And this variant used more structure. It used the subfields of FPN when n is composite. And so it's more efficient, and the key size should be updated. So here's a short review of the recent work on this topic. So the curves were proposed by Fotiadis and Constantino in 2018. And so at the same time, there are two works going together, finding more secure curves and improving the way we estimate the security of the finite field FPN and how we estimate the complexity of the special tower number field sieve. And this work is on a refinement of the model of cost and application of all of the possibilities of the spatial tower number field sieve to many different curves. And it improves on the work of Barbulescu, El Mohabe, and Gamma. And so all the details are on the long talk and on the paper. And as a conclusion, here is a short list of interesting curves. So for embedding degrees, so the exponents of the finite field from quite small to 16, and for higher degrees, actually, it's not very interesting. The finite field is too large. And which one are the more interesting for pairing efficiency? So actually, the BLS12, Photiadis-Martindale curve of embedding degree 12, maybe Kashisha Schaeffer-Scott curve of embedding degree 16, and that's pretty much all. So the short list is quite short, which is good news for people who want to implement pairings. And so the code is available on this link, and you might be interested in this file for the curve. And this is my last slide. So other interesting embedding degrees are 18 and 24, and I also have some results for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? You can either post it in the chat or you can raise your hand. So there's one question in the chat. I'll just read it from Chloe Martindale. How likely do you think it is that the attacks will still be improved?
Okay, I don't know. So right now we are going to try to improve the model of cost, the knowledge we have of this algorithm. But I don't see a very important improvement this year or next year. So right now we are working on to understand the algorithm and to try to implement the tower number field sieve, because it's not yet implemented and there is no record. So when we will be doing, not me, but when people will be doing a record computation, maybe they will discover some improvements, but I don't think it will be an asymptotic improvement. It will be in practice how to make it work for small fields.
Thank you very much. Then looking at the time, so I'll just say, let's take the other questions to a different online forum. So thanks again very much for the talk, Aurore. And I would then give back to Christoph for the last talk of this technical session.
Okay, thank you.
Laurent, can you try to share your screen now if it works?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we go to the fallback.
We'll try one more time. If it doesn't work, Kevin will share his screen with my slides. Does it work?
Beautiful.
Yes?
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so the last talk of this session and of PKC 2020 is faster cofactorization with ECM using mixed representations by Cyril Bouvier and Laurent Imbert. And Laurent will give the talk now.
Okay, well, thank you, Christophe, for the introduction. And well, it's the last talk of this very special PKC edition, so I'm not going to be too technical. And we're going to talk a lot about factorization. So integer factorization is an easy problem to state. I give you an integer and I ask you to find one factor of it. But in practice, it could be much more difficult. For example, if I give you this big number And even if I tell you that it's only the product of two primes, you will have a hard time finding the factors. So you can, if you want to do that, you will pick your favorite algorithm to do that, namely the number field sieve. And then you can run that for quite some time. If you only have one CPU, I would recommend to wait for the quantum computer. If you can use more than one CPU, it's still going to take some time, but it's going to be doable. And during this computation, you will spend a lot of time trying to factor much smaller integers like this one, or that one, or this one, or this one. This step of the sieving phase of NFS is called cofactorization. And as you can see on this example, the numbers that we want to factor have roughly 25 to say 40 decimal digits, and they break into 2 or 3 primes. So in order to do that, you're going to use another factorization algorithm, that is ECM, the elliptic curve method. I'm not going to enter into the details today. The only thing you need to know is that the more important part of the first step of ECM is the big scalar multiplication between a scalar k and a point p on your elliptic curve. And k, in this case, is a special number. It's the product of all prime powers that are less than a given bound, capital B. And the nice thing about ECM when it's part of an NFS implementation is that these B values, these bounds, can be hard-coded. So what is our paper about? We have an algorithm. We presented an algorithm that takes a list of bounds, B, capital B, and produces optimal, hopefully optimal formulas for computing K times P for all these B values. And we also produce C code for all these possible B values. So as an example, I give you the result of our algorithm for B equal 105. And on this example, you can see different things. The computation is split into what we call blocks. Blocks are product of some primes that are the prime factors of the big scalar K. And the first 5 blocks that you're going to process are going to be processed on a twistor Edward curves. And they have been selected because they allow efficient computation. On the right side of the table, you have the number of doubling. We also use triplings and the number of addition. And you can see that those numbers are rather small. Then at some point in the computation, you will switch to a Montgomery curve. And this is a free operation. And then you will finish the computation on your Montgomery curve for in this example, 6 remaining blocks. And there you, as you may know, you use something that is different. You use Lucas chains and differential additions. So in total, all the primes that you see on this table are all the prime factors of the scalar K for B is 105, and exactly those. There is no more. So how do we do that? The algorithm works in 2 phases. The first is a block generation. And we basically extend previous ideas from Dixon and Lenstra and Bos and Kleinjung. And of course, there is no way we could check all the possible factors of K for large value of B. So we reverse the process and ask ourselves, as Bos and Kleinjung did, what are the integers that we can compute efficiently? For example, if I allow to a computation that takes only 12 doublings, 8 triplings, and 1 additions, what are the integers that I can reach? For example, I can reach these 2 integers. If I factor them, I can see that the left one is a smooth, for B is 105, is a smooth integer, meaning that all the factors are less than 105. So I can possibly use this one in my computation. The number on the right, on the other hand, is not smooth. It's the product of 2 primes that are much bigger than 105. So I know I won't be able to use this block in my computation. So what we did in this block generation phase, we generate billions of integers of that form that are easy to compute and correspond to B smooth integers for different values of B. And that took us quite some time on different CPUs. Then there is a second phase which consists of combining all these blocks together, and the objective is to, given the set of blocks, billions of blocks, find a very small subset of those such that the product of the prime factors are exactly the prime factors that appears into the scalar K. Bos and Kleinjung did the same thing, but the strategy that they used at the time did not apply in our case, mainly because we used triplings, and also because we switched to from twisted Edwards to Montgomery curve at some point in the computation. So we had to find something different, and there was no way we could go for an exhaustive search, total exhaustive search. But we managed to limit, we did something rather exhaustive by allowing some heuristic. The first one is to limit the depth of exploration by considering that an optimal solution should not have too many blocks. That's heuristic. That does not guarantee that we have something optimal. And the second thing that allows to go for an exhaustive search is to reduce the depth of the exploration by exploiting some known upper bound, lower bound, sorry, on the cost of an optimal solution, and that could be the result of Bos and Kleinjung's algorithm or anything, even the double and add if you want. And this bound is updated at each time we add one block to a solution, we update this bound. So if you want to have more details about the algorithm, of course, you can check the paper, but we also have a website with the source code of our algorithm, with comparison and all the formulas for all the B1 values that we considered. Those are the B1 values included in the NFS implementation CADO NFS. Of course, we also produce the C code that is now included into CADO NFS. So to wrap up what we did, we factorized a lot of small numbers to speed up the factorization of a lot of medium-sized numbers, and finally to help factorizing a very large number. And the number that I gave you at the beginning is the largest integer that was factored to time, RSA 250, and this work was done by Aurore and her friends in Nancy, and you can find more information on the announcement on their website. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurent, for this very nice presentation. We have one question by Luca De Feo. I'll read it out. This regards the switching from Edwards to Montgomery. You mentioned it's free, and Luca is asking whether this should actually take two field additions.
It's even more than free. It saves for multiplication. The way we did it is to the last operation on the twisted Edwards curves is an addition. So we don't perform this addition, and instead we have a new operation that takes 2 points on the twisted Edwards and produce the sum of these 2 points on the Montgomery curve. And we use the fact that we can play with we drop the y coordinate, and we can take any representative in the projective space on the Montgomery curve to save in total 4, well, not field because it's CCM, but ring multiplications. The operation is not complete. It does not work for special points, but in the context of ECM, it does not matter, and the end result when we compute the GCD at the end of ECM is always correct. And you can find all the details in the paper, of course.
Are there any more questions? You can either ask them by writing them on the chat or raising your hand. Okay. Are there questions for any speaker of the audience of the session. All right, so I suppose this this concludes the session. Thank you everybody for joining in, and well, see you at the next PKC. Hopefully, hopefully not online.
Before everyone goes away, we have closing remarks for PKC. So, thanks to everyone for being here for this first and hopefully last virtual PKC. Let me pass the floor to Petros, who's going to start with the closing remarks. Petros?
Hello. Yeah. So, well, the first, hopefully last virtual PKC is approaching to an end. Well, it was unfortunate that due to the pandemic, we couldn't welcome you here in Edinburgh, which is a beautiful place to be. However, on the bright side, we had a much bigger participation on this PKC, which we're going to hear more in a minute. But of course, this meant that we had to replan everything. So we had to do the conference completely differently. And this would be completely impossible if we didn't have a lot of help. And starting with the virtual conference administrators, Kevin McCurley and Kay McKelly, that I mean, they did most of the things of the virtual conference. Also, we got a lot of support from ISCR. I mean, both the board and the PKC steering committee. There were a number of emergency meetings and know-how from the Eurocrypt that already ran in a similar fashion. Yeah, and of course, well, the Edinburgh team was Agilos, Mark, my general coaches, Markov and Vasilis, and Dimitris Karakostas, which was our local help, which local, when it became virtual, was basically some parts of the website. But of course, he helped a lot before as well. We definitely need to thank a lot the speakers and the moderators that they adapted very well to these different circumstances. And well, some of the speakers were also very creative. And of course, we need to thank you, that all the audience that attended these talks and made questions and made this a productive conference. And finally, we should not forget our sponsors, Definity, IOHK, and SIGSA, CyberNexus, which they stuck with us even with all this back and forth and changes. Yeah, I think this is from myself, and I'll give now the talking to Agilos, that he will say more about this creativity that I said regarding some of the talks.
Okay, do you hear me? Okay. Thanks, Pedro. And do you see my screen, by the way? This will be a blank screen.
Yes,
great. Okay, so on my end, I want to thank one more time the PKC Program Committee. There was one final task that was ongoing as you know, the conference was unfolding these days. There will be journal invitations for selected papers from the conference. So we have 3 invitations to the Journal of Cryptology. And furthermore, there's special arrangements that the steering committee has secured with the IAT General Information Security, where 10 papers will be invited for the special issue. The PC has voted during the conference, using, of course, all the information that the program committee had at its disposal from the reviewing stage, and we're tabulating the results, and will be informing the authors about these invitations in the next few days. Now something new. Recognizing and foremost, the importance of effective communication of research results, but as well as the challenges we'll face in adapting to this new environment that we have all been subjected. Because of the pandemic, the PKC Steering Committee took the initiative to expediently create a new award for PKC, which we hope will will motivate more work for making our results more easy to communicate and appreciate, both by inside the community as well as the wider public. So starting from 2020 and onwards at PKC, there's a Presentation Appreciation Award, which will be given annually at the discretion of the program chair, the general chair, and the program committee of the conference. And the intention of the award is to recognize presentations that communicate well the message of the paper, keep the audience's attention, and be entertaining and have an excellent quality slides and video. Now, this year, as I said, like we're going to start from this year, it's a great pleasure to announce that the award is going to be given to Luca De Feo and Michael Meyer for their paper Threshold Schemes for Misogyny Assumptions. And there is a nice plaque that the general chairs of PQC are preparing. The only downside is that it looks like there's going to be a posthumous award, from what I understand, or maybe not. I guess at this stage, I would hope that I'm interrupted by a pirate riot coming from somewhere.
I'm still alive.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Angelos. Thank you for the award. I would like to invite co-curators, my co-stars, to also come and say hi, if their cameras and microphones, just so that you can see their faces. Like Zoom is not perfect for this, but
hi there. Hi there. Hello, you people.
Fabio. Hi, Thorsten.
Hi there. Hi, Luca.
And hi, Michael. So it was a huge fun to work with these crazy people. I just want to say a few words on our happiness to receive this award. We are very honored and humbled to receive it. And we'd like to dedicate it to all those who give their time, energy, uniqueness, be it conference, be it high school, whatever. When we first published our video, our goal was, well, you guessed it, to go viral, bootstrap our careers as YouTubers, and launch our own cryptocurrency. But more seriously, we thought we had done something decently funny, but we hadn't anticipated so much appreciation by the whole community. And we really thank you all for that. But if you allow me to speak just a few more sentences, I would like to say that we thought we wanted to do this for being funny, but this is not only about being funny, of course. Our mission, and by our, I mean of the community as scientists, is to advance knowledge, but also to communicate it. And in our opinion, it is very fitting that the same community that has raised Alice and Bob to worldwide fame is celebrating today pirates who do post-quantum secret sharing. We do believe in the power of stories to transmit scientific content. And we hope that you appreciated the scientific presentation in our video as much as you loved our pirate antics. As difficult, stressful, painful these recent times have been, these were also an opportunity for our community to try new things, to experiment with alternative ways of communicating science. We believe that all these experiments will not go away as the COVID pandemic fades. And the way we communicate, we share, we engage, will continue to be shaped by external factors, be it YouTube memes, or climate change. And so for this reason, we would like to encourage everyone in this community to take the same path as we did and experiment with new engaging with. And now question, and I'm sure you want to know more, how much work we put into making this. Let me tell you that, yes, of course, it was a lot of work, but it was not as much as you may think. I don't know, I would say that it was like 3-4 times as much work for a standard talk, a good quality talk, of course, you've read for the first time. We will be happy to share more information with you if you're interested via Zulip or via email. Just write to us. We can give you more information. And yeah, I see Alice is asking exactly this question in the chat. So to give you just a very short hint, I'm now going to try and use a Zoom to share something with you. So just give me a second to discover how this works in Zoom. So screen sharing, desktop 1. So it seems that I need to click this and this. Okay, here we go.
But is it quantum safe?
Yo ho ho, give me a little Q rum. 16 camps in this round of mist. Yo ho ho, give me a little Q rum. Break them and party on their mailing list. Yo ho ho, give me a little Q rum. The keys are small if you go with psych, but talking speed there is nothing like his crypto or maybe bike. Just big and safe and TS can, unless you hate a linear span, in which case go with the Frodo can. Yo ho ho, give me a little Q rum.
Season Captain hires expensive crew. Fair share booty. No land lubbers. No land lubbers.
Okay, and with that, thank you all, and see you at the next PKC.
All right, so thank you, Luca, and thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone who worked so hard to bring us this video. As I mentioned, we're delighted to that you are the first recipients of this presentation appreciation award. And I should just add that the steering committee is committed to make this award a long-lived one, and find ways all together that we can transition to presenting these high-quality presentations when hopefully we're going to return to conferences where we participate, not in a virtual mode, but in person. With this, I'm going to move, I'm going to call Markulf Koolwijs, the general co-chair, to give us a presentation on statistics and numbers about PKC.
Okay, sorry, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the handover. So I will talk mostly about registration numbers, and then our virtual kind of team will look about online participation, which I think is much more important for an online event. I looked at last year's registration numbers, and they are really completely different. So they're hard to compare. One difference is that most people registered late, partly because we kind of scrambled this together and decided also quite late how exactly to do it and when to do it. But also because we kept registration open throughout the conference. So we have also a number of registrations today, even after I collected those statistics. I think another difference is that there were, contrary to what one might maybe expect with the low cost, there were actually not that many completely new registrations. So many people came over from Eurocrypt. So there were about 66 new registrations. And I think that's much kind of lower in percentage than last year's PKC, but last year's PKC was before Eurocrypt, and it was in China. So I think it's a bit uncomparable, as I mentioned. So we have 379 at least, and counting probably, compared to 134 from last year. So more than double, but I think that is kind of not all that meaningful. In terms of countries, we have a majority of participants from the United States, and then a lot of people from a European country, probably due to the convenient time zone. Quite a high number of brave Japanese, despite gruesome time zones, I would say. And then a broad spread over a lot of countries, maybe the most exotic being Fiji, maybe quite fitting for the pirate themes. And yeah, I think that's mostly it from me. And I now hand over to Kevin and Kay to give some statistics on the virtual participation, how many videos were watched, the sessions, and the like.
Thanks, Marco. I think Kevin is still working on screen sharing, speak of the devil. And may also need to unmute himself. Possibly. Well, I was going to let him take the lead, but I'll let him unmute himself.
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay.
How about now?
You're good. You can talk.
Okay. I'm still learning this Zoom stuff. I just wanted to comment first about the preparation of the video. We had an award today for a truly unusual video. And when I get the uploaded videos and I transfer them to YouTube, I usually check them to see if the audio quality is okay, because some of them have had difficulty producing them. And that one stood out. I mean, I sort of started playing it and I looked at the screen. It's like, you know, oh, this is interesting. And I sent an email to Agalos. I didn't want him to be surprised by anything too much. He wrote back and, you know, he loved it. And so I think we were in good shape on that. But I think that preparing a video is something that is mostly new to us. And some of us have found it easy to do and some have found it hard. I think it would be useful to collect information for people who follow us about what's the best way you found to create a video for the conference. I just had a couple of things to say about statistics. I had looked at the registrations after the others, and but before the final number, and I had found 378 registrations. I just want to make a little comment about the Zulip also, that there are now 645 users in the Zulip chat.icr.org. Only 51 new ones picked up after Eurocrypt. What happened was I decided to flush all the messages and keep all the accounts. There's no reason to have people create new passwords. And so we continued on a little continuity on it. We're going to keep the thing going, hopefully, to crypto. I wanted to say something about also how many statistics, because we switched from webinar to Zoom large room, we don't have the same statistics on how many people were actually in each Zoom session. But from our observations, Kay had actually taken notes on all of them. It looked like each session had about 100 viewers on Zoom. And if you look at on YouTube, there's actually about an equal number who watched it on YouTube. And so we had a fair number of people who were tuning in. So for example, for me, it was 6 a.m. for the start of the session. It's a little painful, but I can go back and watch it on YouTube. That's kind of a nice feature. One more thing I wanted to say was the Zulip usage. It turns out that about 3/4 of the usage on Zulip is for private messages. So it's not visible to everyone how much activity is going on there. You can create public messages on a stream, or you can create private messages to each other. And it turns out that most of you are pretty secretive, and so you use private messaging. I had some statistics about the viewership of the YouTube videos. There is one outlier here that has the most views. That certainly stands out. It certainly, it got some tweets, for example, that say people should go look at the thing. These statistics are a little out of date. I had to download them and create them in a different view here from the YouTube channel. But there's really, you know, if you think about it, these numbers might look low, you know, for how many viewers, but these are for the, you know, watching the whole 20-minute video. And, you know, that means people are really interested in the paper and tune in and watch them. So that's a very good sign, I think. This URL I will paste into the chat, but I'll just hand over. Kay, do you want to say anything?
No, not much, other than to congratulate PKC attendees as your percentages of attendance per session were actually higher than Eurocrypt. So like relative to the amount of people who registered, you guys had more people actually attending each session. So good job. But otherwise, no, it's just been a great conference.
And while we're thanking everyone, I should say that it's really a pleasure to work with the program chairs and the general chairs, and also the program committee members who have each pitched in to provide some extra effort to these conferences. What makes it work is the fact that it's a big team effort. And I think that has been very successful so far. Let's try to work on making a better one for crypto if we can find a way to improve things. And I'll hand it over to the next person.
Okay, so that's me, right? Okay, so we want to have a Q&A session where we discuss, I mean, we get feedback from the community on what we did right, what we did wrong, and use this feedback to make better choices for crypto. So I'm just going to moderate. I'm not going to monopolize the discussion. I'm not going to give a talk or something. So people that have something to contribute, please unmute yourself one at a time and tell us what you thought. Tell us what you thought was better than Eurocrypt. Tell us what you thought was worse than Eurocrypt. Tell us what you did not like at Eurocrypt and you did not get a chance to say it. We really love to hear your opinion. So I open the floor to anyone that would like to give some opinion. Okay, we did everything perfect. That's my opinion too.
Since nobody's going, I guess I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So compared to Eurocrypt, the Zoom big meeting is definitely a big plus for me. Like I've said it before, this webinar feels kind of overwhelming, especially with like the 1,000 people potentially watching there. But here, where you can actually see the participants, is definitely much better. And I'd suggest that we keep this format for crypto. That's more or less my take on the Zoom stuff there.
So maybe one point that we would like to hear opinions, if there are, is the idea of social hour that we had here. What do you think about it? You all liked it. Amazing.
I think people are too shy. And let me just speak about the social thing. I think that the social aspect is something that's very, very important to a conference, that we'd be able to interact with each other, meet new people, talk about the talks, about the field, about, you know, your university, what kind of job opportunities there are. This is an extremely important part of a conference. We switched to the breakout rooms, which is a feature of Zoom Large Meeting. That's a little bit weird because you get thrown into a room with a random selection of people, but in a small group, so you can have a small discussion. I think we're going to go to one of those after this session, and I think you should try it again and see if you like it. I think it's much better than what we had for Eurocrypt. We also tried to create this weird experience with some other experiences online, some of which are more or less successful. And I think we'll try to create something even different for crypto if we can come up with something creative.
Yeah, just to repeat what Kay put on the chat. So feel free to also write on Zulip, which is going to stay for longer so that we can collect this feedback. And I mean, you can use also the Zoom chat. So once we finish this Q&A session, we have our last social hour for the conference. But if there are more opinions, you know, this is kind of a social hour. This is a gathering. We discuss what we thought about PKC. So before we break into breakout rooms, if there's something that you would like to discuss with the entire PKC participants, say now would be a better time.
Yeah, I maybe have a question about the code of conduct and how rigorously we should enforce it to some extent. So that did people find it helpful that people use their kind of full names, and what should we do with people that don't follow the rules in a way that that's maybe an interesting question, especially for a bigger conference like crypto, if we really decide to use yeah, like Zoom large rooms.
Mm-hmm. I should also add to that hosts in the Zoom system, they are able, for example, like to remove people that do not follow the code of conduct. They don't have their full name. This is not something that we have, you know, we haven't acted on that during PKC, but this is an option, right? So there are pros and cons. So there are some people that, you know, unintentionally didn't enter their name properly. We didn't have any disruptions. So I think it's like, should be a community decision about how, you know, rigorously should we enforce the code of conduct. For example, now coming up at crypto, which also, as Marco said, is going to be a bigger event. You know, it's going to be quite likely more hundreds, you know, a few more hundred people perhaps at peak sessions. And as we found now with a great room environment, I think a lot of people appreciated the fact that you could see the list of participants on the side. But at the same time, you also see that there do exist participants occasionally that do not follow the code of conduct rules.
Yes, I noticed one name on the screen that says just Hans, and not to pick on anybody in particular, but it's not completely obvious how to change your name. And honestly, it is controlled by which client you're using and whether you are logged in on your account. And so you may have a standard name on your account. We investigated other ways to have the URL that transfer your name from the login, but it turns out that's not a reliable thing depending on what web client is used. So it's nice that I have not heard of any violations of the code of conduct other than people who haven't figured out how to change their name. I think it's even harder in the webinar format to change your name as an attendee.
It is, yeah, almost impossible. So one of the other ways that we can enforce that, should we wish to be more stringent about it, is that co-hosts can forcibly rename people. So we could theoretically forcibly rename people if we know who someone is. You know, I don't know how desirable that is in terms of enforcement, but that option does exist.
If there are no more other Angelos, you wanted to?
Yeah, I just say maybe just one final point for people to give feedback in Zulip if they want. So there is a suggestion to do some poster session. This is something that a number of people came up with a suggestion like that. The poster session will be combined with this Gather Town or equivalent or similar type of sort of virtual environment. And the idea of a poster session obviously is that people will have a poster. So if you go find them in the virtual environment, they could, you know, talk to them about, and they would also see a poster. So it would be nice to see if people are, you know, are interested in that, and if there is you know, enthusiasm in trying this, and I guess that will motivate further people on the ICR side that have already contributed a lot of time. But I know that there is some interest in trying to provide this as well in an effort of making the social events after the main sessions a bit more interactive.
I think Eurocrypt had a rump session, which in some sense functions like a poster session, sort of late results, small results, but it's not the same as a poster session. I don't think we've ever had any poster session at an IECR conference, but it's worth considering for the future. Ultimately, it comes up to the chairs to decide how they want their program to be run. And the chairs of crypto have, you know, a lot of freedom about what they decide to use. I'll certainly be having discussions with them about what's feasible to implement.
Yeah, I mean, a virtual poster session is arguably easier because you don't have to print a huge poster and carry it somehow around, and yeah.
Yeah, on the airplane, it's difficult.
We could just require people to hold their posters in front of them if we want to preserve that aspect of it.
That may be a signal for us to move to the social session.
In that case, I will be breaking people into